You mentioned you might get your certificate to study cosmetic chemistry, is that right?
In theory, yes, I really want to do it. I'm like, maybe I want to get the certificate, maybe I want to get a master's.
Yeah.
Figuring it out.
I think it's a good idea. A lot of people always ask, what should I do if I want to become a cosmetic chemist? And you already have a lot of impressive experience on the product development side that I didn't have when I went to grad school. So I went to Fairleigh Dickinson for 2 years, and that was up in Jersey at the time. This was like, 40 years ago because I'm old.
No.
I'm just kidding. She's 22, so I'm like, you're a baby. At the time, that was the only grad program, and it was great to get the connections I needed in the industry. I thought it was a pretty good way to get my foot in the door, but I can honestly say I learned more in about 2 weeks at my first job in formulation than I did in 2 years of grad school, to be completely honest. And grad school put me in debt. So I think grad school can be great if you're gonna get your master's, if you can do a certificate program. It's great to get that foundational knowledge that is gonna help you not have to do so much trial and error in the lab.
Exactly.
But at the same time, if you're really enjoying, the company you're working with and stuff like that, I think you could also learn a lot just working with other chemists and coming into the lab all the time, because now we're friends and I don't want you to leave.
To Dallas.
So come to Dallas all the time. No, it's so funny because a lot of the chemists I've worked with don't have a master's degree, and I think it probably took them a little longer to get to where they are, but honestly, I think you're fine either way, but it's so impressive that you're at the point in your career where it's you're at the start, the world is your oyster. So anyone watching this too, master's degree can be a great way of getting your foot in the door, but at the same time, if you cannot afford grad school, or you do not have the time for grad school, or you have a job that you love and you want to learn formulation, there are so many certificate programs to consider too. You did a speaking thing at Spelman, right?
Yes, I did.
All right, talk about that a little.
Okay, so first of all, anyone who's watching this went to Spelman, I hate you. I'm jealous of you. It is so beautiful. I walked onto the campus. I felt like such an imposter, such a fraud. And I basically was there as a speaker. I was there to talk about how to get into product development as a young Black woman in particular. I feel like diversifying beauty is not just about having diverse people in your campaigns, having them in your Instagram. It's also about having diverse people in the actual formulation room, on the product development team, on the product marketing team.
Absolutely.
So what I went there to talk about was how young women in general, but specifically young Black women and young women from diverse backgrounds, can get involved in product development. So what I did is I talked to them through ideation to execution, which is essentially how do you go from creating an idea, figuring out a gap in the market, and actually having a tangible, real product in front of you, and then marketing that product, and how do you do that full thing together. And I feel like for this entire year, it's been a very lovely year.
Yeah.
That is my favorite moment thus far, having the students come up to me and be like, I love this. I have a bio degree, and I thought the only thing I could do was, go to med school.
That was me too!
And everyone says that to you. Shut up, my dad, if you're watching this. You're wrong. I did have a good degree.
That's right.
You can do more. And that's not to say, listen, MD maybe one day still could happen, but if you were someone who's ever felt like having a passion for science really limits you to one very particular career, there is so much to do and there's so much to be shared. And I feel like accessibility means the world to me. And accessibility isn't always just about telling people about things. It's also holding them and pulling their hand into it and letting them into that actual room. So that was one of hopefully many speaking engagements, one of many ways in which I can bring a couple more people into the industry.
100%. I love that. So Spelman's the first HBCU that has a program too.
So they're the first HBCU to have a cosmetic science program. And we know in general, even just looking for cosmetic science programs within the US, there's not that many actually. It's actually a very small thing. So for them to not only have one, but also have one at HBCU and also make sure that they're really allowing themselves to be accessible to people of all backgrounds is such a game-changing, trailblazing moment.
I think the timing couldn't be better, honestly, with Gloria and Javon. They're really creating content that shows the gap in the market that is inclusivity.
100%.
And I think that it's so good that you've got people now at HBCUs that are able to study this, because had you guys been in the room in the first place, this shit would have never happened.
And let's talk about that. I feel like one thing we're seeing commonly now on social media is right now we're having an epidemic of white pigment. White pigment has made its way back into color cosmetics like crazy.
God, the blushes.
The people will joke and they'll say, oh my gosh, get in the lab. And it's it's not just about these brands getting into the lab, it's about these brands bringing people into the lab that know what's happening. So typically what will happen when you are giving formulas to someone is the people who are the actual cosmetic chemists, also the PD team, try out these products, which are these samples. So if someone who is a lot lighter is trying on these samples, they might be like, oh, this is amazing, looks fabulous.
Absolutely.
They might maybe try it on one family friend they have, and that's just not enough. You need to make sure that people who are also creating these products, who even if it works on their skin tone. So for example, I'm Fitzpatrick 5 in theory, I'm around 5. But when I try on a product, I'm not just thinking, oh great, it looks okay on me. I'm thinking, if I was a couple shades darker, would this still work on me? And that informs the way that I think about product development.
Absolutely.
And that is integral to making sure things are actually accessible. So it's not just about bringing diverse people into the room, it's bringing diverse thoughts into the room.
Absolutely. And something that we don't really talk about a lot too, I think, is that a lot of times when you do consumer or clinical testing, that is after the formula has gone through multiple runs runs, and then like you get the feedback from the brand, and then you come back and you fix the formula, and it takes a while, and then you send it back, and then you go back and forth. But when you go to do the consumer testing, well, first of all, to do the clinical testing, we have had this issue with Educated Mess where we set the thing, and we actually have to pay more for them to ensure that they're all Fitzpatrick types. And there was an extra fee for the last product we were getting clinically tested. I looked at the subjects, and there was only one with a Fitzpatrick 6 and two with a Fitzpatrick 5, and I was like, that's just like, it's insane to me that you have to pay extra for that. Point I was gonna make, too, was that if you're, say, working on a blush, and you've only got white people on the product development team, and we're testing it back and forth with the brand and the chemist, and everyone's going back and forth, you may not realize till you get to the consumer testing phase in which the formula's already done that, oh shit, this was not inclusive. And 100%. That is not fair at all to
and it's too late.
Half the population in America.
Yeah.
So I think, again, that goes back to, I'm so happy that certain colleges and stuff are incorporating programs and really enforcing that for Black women, because you have to be in the room. You just shouldn't have to, but
exactly. Until then.
Yeah, until then, it's really great that
get it. Bring the people into the room who get it.
Absolutely. Since we're talking about the different paths that people can take to be involved in the cosmetic industry, I thought we'd let Ava, Miss Girl, come in here and tell us about her journey.
Hey, Miss Girl. So my name is Ava Perkins. I have a bachelor's degree in cosmetic science and formulation design from the University of Toledo, and now I'm getting my PhD in biomembrane sciences from the University of Cincinnati. But I actually did not start out even like knowing that the cosmetic industry existed.
Same.
I feel like a lot of people fall into the industry, and I know what we were talking about education. I feel like there's so many opportunities now where if you want to pursue cosmetic science, you don't need to kind of find a roundabout way to get there.
Right. So when I was coming around, there were no undergrad cosmetic science programs, but it was just the master's program. So tell us about the program at Toledo.
Yeah, oh my gosh. I have nothing but good things to say about UT. Yeah, amazing. That program just turned a decade old this past year, so a really cool milestone.
Actually, no, the undergrad program was there, but by the time I realized what cosmetic science was, I was a senior in college at undergrad. So
yeah,
it was
kind of too late. Yeah. So the first graduating class graduated in 2014, and there were 3 of them, and it has
graduation.
Totally big graduation. It has totally grown since then. In my program, it's really hands-on. We learned to formulate over 50 cosmetic and personal care products in addition to some pharmaceuticals as well. And so basically we're ready to go. Like once we get into the industry, we kind of take away those first 2 years of like trying to figure out what the heck is going on. And so I know employers really appreciate that. And I'm still yet to see a program that is similar to that, because with a lot of these master's programs, it's really accessible because they're online and a lot of people can just take it wherever. But you're kind of missing out on that hands-on portion. But what a lot of programs are doing to accommodate that is that they have these week intensive in-person lab courses, which I teach up to 9 of them a year.
No way.
Yeah, a lot of them. And so you're able to get some of that hands-on experience in just a short amount of time. It's a really long week. You learn a lot. But these are some ways that some master's programs are starting to accommodate for that. So, getting that really valuable information from anywhere in the world, but getting that hands-on experience as well.
It's interesting that you say that, because my program that I went to, Fairleigh Dickinson, this was, oh my gosh, I'm aging myself here. It was 8 years ago. I was 22. Yeah. So this is like 8-9 years ago, and when I was coming through at the time, we took a lot of courses on hair care raw materials and formulations, skincare raw materials and formulations, also a lot of colloid science to talk about emulsion stability. I did take a perfume class. We took some dermal pharmacology, toxicology, immunology classes and stuff like that. But it wasn't until there was one lab class we took, and each week we would make a different type of product. I didn't learn as much about formulation, and I really wish that they had had more hands-on experience. And I hope maybe now they have more hands-on experience there, but I definitely think if you're looking at different grad programs, or if you're looking at the undergrad programs, or considering, if you're going to get a certificate or something, I think it's so crucial to make sure that there is going to be a heavy emphasis on the hands-on. I almost am the type too that, like, when I'm learning, I don't know how you guys are, with a concept is not going to stick in my brain until I have done something. Like even just as simple as telling me the directions of how to get out the door back there and to the sink or something, I have to physically do it before I'm going to remember the steps you've told me.
I mean, I'm all about application. Like you can learn all the theory and stuff in class, which is amazing, but it's kind of a whole new beast once you get into the lab, because some things that you may have learned in theory might not necessarily work in the lab.
Oh, for sure.
So, like you said, just getting that hands-on experience is super duper important.
Yeah, but I think also I wish that I had learned a lot about like the brand side of product development before I had started in formulation, because there are so many things that I think when it comes to working with a brand, if I had had the thinking cap on of like what a brand would want or what a brand is even thinking, that would have driven me to maybe cut back some of the back and forth with the brand, because I am always like, when I'm formulating, I'm like, this is my art project and the science part of it, I have to make it work, but I'm gonna make this the most like artistic formula ever.
Yes.
And then sometimes it gets to the customer and they're like, okay, this costs way too much. What are you doing? Why did you add this ingredient? I'm like, because it's cool. And they're like, well, we're trying to fit this trend. And, you know, it's also very interesting to start at the,
It's a tango between like the PD team and the cosmetic chemistry team. Like you have to like work together and find your flow.
Yeah, it's really good that where you're working too has somebody that's science-minded working, and that, because I don't know about you, but sometimes one of the most frustrating things for me when I was working with brands was that gap between the chemistry and the marketing, and it's like the marketing wants this, and this for this, you know, like the budgetary restriction 100%. Here, and like all clean it, you know, and a lot of that could have been cut back also if the brand had somebody that had a scientific mind, you know, about it. So the company you work for is very lucky.
Absolutely. I did want to ask, I mean, you have a degree in biology, right? How did you get more into the product development side?
Okay, so I feel like I went to USC and I got my bio degree, and I feel like from the very beginning I knew I wanted to get into skincare in some way. I was just trying to figure out what pathway I wanted to take. So I started applying for jobs to work with dermatologists, and you know, like it's very hard to find that. So luckily in my junior year I started doing actual research with a derm, and she had her own skincare brand, but she wasn't really necessarily like trying to let me in on that part just yet. So it was more so even just being able to like experience people in the treatment room and seeing like what they're looking for and what their concerns are, doing research on ingredients, getting really comfy with databases. I feel like that is one thing. People sometimes will be like, oh my gosh, like I have a degree in this and I feel like I can't work in this industry. And it's like, no, sometimes you have to just boil things down to what they truly mean. Sometimes it really is just understanding the skill of data analysis or data farming and being able to read through complicated scientific literature. That's something I really bring towards my current role. And that understanding is something that other people were not trained in. So you might be thinking, oh my God, I don't want this boring bio lab, but you're learning a skill there when it comes to looking at this actual research and being able to read things. Sometimes that are boring. That's a benefit of bio too. Like I'm at least really passionate about skincare and really passionate about cosmetics, but a lot of the stuff I was reading in college, I was not interested in the slightest. And that really helped me, because when you're reading something like that, how do you still understand methodology? How do you still make sure something is verifiable? How do you look at information like that? And then being able to leverage that kind of understanding and those skills, doing the research, and then also just like being able to grow a platform at the age that I was able to grow it and really be able to show that I had an understanding of skincare and beauty and market trends, and most importantly, making the complicated digestible. So much of product development is really getting to these baseline human things. If no one sits down and thinks to themselves, oh my gosh, I want a humectant and I want it to have something, and I don't want it to have phenoxyethanol. No one ever thinks that. Oh my gosh, every day I go on a walk with my dog, I come back and my skin is so freaking dry. That's what they think. And you as a person who has that information, you think about how you can make it digestible for them. And you're like, actually, what I hear is a gel moisturizer. That's what I hear. Something lightweight, something easy, something that won't be greasy, and then, you know, you pass that off and you then use your intelligence to build an actual formula and build, you know, ingredients or things like that. So I'd say all of that together just made it really helpful for me and really allowed me to find my way into the beauty industry through what some would call an unconventional pathway.
Ava talks on her channel a lot too about how interpreting scientific literature is a skill. It takes a while. And I think also when it comes to product development or when it comes to cosmetic chemistry, we also hear a lot of fear mongering of certain ingredients. It is so crucial for brands to have a scientific person on their team so that they're not coming to the lab saying, hey, I need a beef tallow sunscreen because I heard that's better SPF than avobenzone.
And like we hear beef tallow and your body starts to shake. Literally. And sometimes I'll do things out of like just genuine wanting to educate. Like I saw a brand the other day on TikTok, and it was a smaller brand, and they were like, this is a beef tallow mineral sunscreen. And I was like, walk me through that. So I look at the formula, they basically mix beef tallow and zinc oxide. And so I had commented and they're like, this is really amazing. It has no endocrine disruptors. It's going to be safe for everybody. My mom is someone who's really passionate and really afraid of using a lot of stuff. And it's so funny because like I'm your daughter and you're afraid of so many things. So I help her. So it's like, oh my gosh, my mom actually loves the idea of natural sunscreen. Can you show me the studies that you guys have done on this?
I love it.
And then they're like, oh, we haven't actually done studies, but zinc oxide has a lot of studies on it. And I was like, great, but would you be able to walk me through your formulation? Have you done SPF testing? Would you be able to share that? And they're like, oh no, we trust it. Stuff like that also is so frustrating, but it's like hopefully even though they might have read that and be like, oh my god, like screw her. I'm sure they read that and they thought, okay, we need to do something. And hopefully even if they don't listen, someone else who goes on to that TikTok is now going to see that comment and be like, maybe I should be a little bit inquisitive. It's okay to have a little bit of curiosity. I feel like curiosity doesn't necessarily mean full-on paranoia. And sometimes people, brands, educators prey on that.
Yes.
People want you to be paranoid. They want you to be anxious. They want you to be terrified. And that isn't always helpful. It's not always guaranteeing safety or security. If anything,
Absolutely.
sometimes it's leading you to products that are more harmful and are not adequately protecting
Yes.
you.
Yeah,
Literally.
absolutely. And I think going back to what you were saying about the studies, I feel like when people do their own research, they're number one, I feel like searching things in a way that's just confirmation bias.
I was gonna say, you're like looking for the things that confirm.
What ingredients are poisonous, or is this ingredient going to hurt me? And of course, like, you're going to see some things like that. But talking about the methodology, I don't think people realize when you're reading a study and reading through the methodology, that requires knowing context of whether that methodology is correct or
There you
not.
go.
And so you kind of have to be in it to understand
Yeah.
it. And I feel like people just think that, just because this is like published, that means it's like amazing. No,
And
there's
that's
actually a lot of research fraud that happens as well. That's a whole issue in
And
academia
that's the whole issue
too.
itself. You have to like, be able to interpret. And Ava and I have had
It's a
talks
whole
about
thing.
certain studies that I've misinterpreted. And she was talking about the other day a certain thing with SPF potentially coming from natural sources and upcycled ingredients.
I'm doing actually a project in my PhD right now where I'm working with natural ingredients and seeing like what their like natural SPF is,
Yes.
because I think that's a pretty popular thing, is trying to find like
Yes.
SPF alternatives in formulations right now. And so there are some studies out there that, or at least that people like to say that, carrot oil has an SPF of like
Oh my goodness.
30, or like raspberry seed
Let's
oil.
talk about it.
It does not.
And
I've tested that myself. It does not. It doesn't
so
have an
funny.
SPF of over like 1.
People need to hear more about that, especially. I feel like there's this new trend of like eating your sunscreen. I recently had a brand new talk to me, like, we sell a thing that can help you with internal protection. I was like, send me the research.
Send it
me
to
the
me.
data.
Send it to
Well,
me.
That's a big thing. My senior year, I actually worked on something. Luckily, you actually did the research, but it was like more a research design.
Yeah.
And it was called, can you eat your retinol? And it was like, well, how many carrots would you have to eat to, in theory,
Yeah.
get the vitamin A that a retinol
It's like
would give you?
hundreds,
And it's like, you
right?
would have to literally become a carrot. You would have to evolve and morph into a carrot and
Wrap you in
be
this
like
orange blanket.
exactly. And people don't understand that. So yes, in theory, you can search up stuff. I am someone who loves the idea of eating things that might, in theory, help my skin barrier and help me like eating my way to glowy skin. But I would never insinuate that that alone
Is like a
is
replacement.
enough. It's like
Yeah.
more like an addition.
Especially when we're talking about SPF.
There we
Like,
go.
because we're trying to shield ourselves from the sun, there's really not anything that you can eat that is
There
going
we
to
go.
essentially make you grow this layer of protection.
No.
Like, it would be nice if so. Okay,
I'm
have
a
you
fan.
seen those supplements that are like, oh, you can eat this and it boosts your SPF?
That's the thing that I was like, they send it. I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna accept this.
Yeah.
Like, I want to read it, and even then, maybe that's even me being too paranoid. I'm like, this doesn't sound logical.
It kind of gives the same energy of those spray tans that you can inhale, like the nasal ones. Have you guys seen that?
Oh my
before?
God, yes.
We don't know how dangerous that
That'd
is.
be dangerous.
You need to be
pretty
really careful
dangerous.
about anything that's going into you
In your
orally.
body.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like oral medications, you need to be super careful because it's going in.
It's going in there.
This is why when people think
Just
your
like when our skin is not a
protected.
sponge.
Yeah, our
Yes.
skin is not a sponge. People are like, oh my god, don't put it on your skin, eat it. If anything, you should be happy that you're putting things topically because
Yes.
this is your first line of defense.
Yes.
It's your biggest line of defense.
Yes.
Yes.
The skin barrier.
Skin
You know
barrier.
what's funny? You know what's actually funny too about the whole eating your sunscreen thing? Obviously, it's like this cycle where a new ingredient gets fearmongered because somebody discovered something that isn't actually contextually relevant, but then they decided I can get a lot of clicks and views off of this, so I'm just going to say it. And one that I was seeing recently was titanium dioxide, and that one's causing cancer now. But the study was on titanium dioxide in the context of being on Teflon that is in a frying pan. So unless
What?
you are heating your titanium dioxide and ingesting it, then it really wouldn't be an issue.
And
But
like,
that's like,
also
oh, you're
heating
eating our
it
sunscreen?
white high.
Yes.
Because now people have been like, oh my god, like if I use a non-stick pan, I'm gonna die. And it's like,
Right.
no, because again, the temperatures that they're using in these studies, how often are you in your commercial little LA kitchen? I'm stubbing myself here. Like,
Right.
I feel like, I have this in professional kitchen. The gas is only going so high, babe.
Right.
We're trying to save money. The gas is medium low.
Yeah.
If your stove is getting hot enough to do that, you
Rent
got
it out
other
to
issues.
me.
Yeah.
Let me cook there. Rent us your industrial stove that is creating cancer. Because
Yes.
I will use it to make some really good fried rice.
Yes.
And it won't stick at all.
At all.
Seriously.
It'll be fire.
But no, I think that kind of brings up like the double-edged sword of the way information is so at our fingertips right now because of
Yes.
TikTok. Because you have experts on there that are gonna help you sift through information and make big, complicated industries more easy to digest, like you were saying.
Yes.
But then you also have the people that don't necessarily know what they're talking about that are like, oh, this is a talking point. This will go viral. I think actually sometimes their intent is positive. Like I think sometimes people think they're going to help.
Yeah.
But they don't have the background knowledge that allows them to contextually consider the information in a way that's relevant to consumers, to route of application, to dose. And then you've got apps like Yuka.
But before we get into that, you know what that reminds me of? Class action lawsuits.
Oh, that's another one.
Yes.
Just because there's a class action lawsuit
Doesn't mean it's true.
does
That means
not
it's
mean
true.
anything.
Anyone could sue anyone
mean
for
it's
anything.
credible.
I can sue Ava for calling me old and ruining my confidence.
It's
And-
true.
And it could be a class action, and there we go.
And that's it's
Context.
almost like, yeah, it's the context, it's the route of application, it's all of that.
You
I
got
think
it.
this is a good point. In general, anytime in the cosmetic industry or any like the food industry too, anytime that somebody is saying that things are black and white, always this, never this, this
Yes.
is good, this is bad, don't listen to them.
Yeah.
Because you would think with science a lot of things are black and white.
Nothing's black
Still
and white.
nothing's black and white.
Genuinely,
No.
take any concept in science that you think there is a clear dichotomy, X and Y. I promise you, there's something in between.
There's something, yeah,
You just like
always.
are not studying it at a level yet where you are privy to that information. Nothing
Yes.
in science at any phase is genuinely black and white.
Yeah.
Every
Absolutely.
time.
I find it such a red flag when people overgeneralize toxicity, especially in cosmetics.
It's like, for instance, if you're comparing different species, think about the difference in what you eat versus what your dog can eat. That plain and simple. And those are the same route of ingestion. Just because you wouldn't give your dog chocolate does not mean chocolate's harmful to humans, you know? Another thing that people will say is like, would you really want this ingredient, propylene glycol? That's the main ingredient in antifreeze. I'm like, water is the main ingredient in toilet bowl cleaner. These are all these logical fallacies that people will put forward to get clicks and views and likes, and it's insane.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, a lot of these problems with social media and the spread of information can be addressed when brands invest their time and energy into employees that know what they're talking about, employees that have the background. And I think we are starting to see that shift in the industry, which is positive. We've got brands like Prequel that have a board of
Always
chemists.
talk about that.
I love
Yeah.
Prequel.
Yes.
But they have a board of chemists that are there to say, okay,
we shouldn't do
maybe
that.
we should do this, maybe we
Yeah.
shouldn't. This is a new ingredient that would be good for this, versus the brands that are able to rely on their reputation to just put out these basic products.
I feel like what a lot of people don't realize is that they're going to be saving a lot of money ahead of time if they
Yes,
just
100%.
like
Good
get a
point.
cosmetic chemist consultant to just weigh in on these things
Yeah.
rather than having to figure out all the aftermath after there's a controversy
Yes.
that
I
happens.
mean, there's even stuff like I left the industry about 2-3 years ago when we launched Educated Mess. And I say left the industry, but I mean, I stopped
regular
actively
9 to 5.
formulating for
Yeah.
other
Yeah.
brands, but that also meant I wasn't keeping up quite as much with certain regulatory things, such as ingredients that may potentially be getting phased out soon. And so it's really good for me to consult with other chemists too. Their expertise and their deep knowledge of certain things might be in an area that I find boring. So it's like really good to get that broad knowledge from a bunch of different people. So it's just interesting because if you're somebody who is interested in the cosmetic science industry and maybe you haven't gone to college yet, or you have started and you're looking at master's programs, or you're already working in beauty product development and you're like, maybe I want to learn how to formulate.
Yeah.
There are so many different routes you can take. Don't stress right now about making sure you do the right one because you can always pivot.
Yeah.
But I think what's important is talking to people in the industry. We'll always answer comments that people are asking us and doing videos, and following the right people on social media, I think is, it sounds douchey,
Yeah.
but it's so crucial, you
But it's
know?
actually so helpful too, because there is so much that you can only learn from existing and doing.
Yeah.
And I think also being a forever learner is so important with the beauty
That,
industry in
wait,
general.
that,
There
yes.
is no one in the beauty industry that knows everything.
No.
You can go to somebody who has been the CEO of a brand for a bazillion years, the head of R&D. I promise you, there might be an intern who walks in and teaches them something new.
Absolutely.
So whether you are the intern, whether you are the veteran, whether you are on the, I don't know, the exec level, being open to learning and being
Yes.
open to hearing is so critical in an industry that is forever changing,
Absolutely.
forever emerging. Yeah, I think that is integral to the whole thing in beauty.
Absolutely. And if there is somebody that claims that they know
I
everything,
was gonna say, that's a red flag. Red flag. And
No
somebody
one
who
knows
can't
everything.
admit that like other people know more things than them in a certain field, because nobody,
Heavy on that.
everyone has different specific niche
Yeah.
areas of expertise too, and it's
absolutely.
It's impossible to know every single thing.
Absolutely.
You can't. Someone
Totally.
who understands skincare incredibly well may not understand every single thing about hair care formulation.
Right.
And
That
that's
is
a
me.
good thing. That is also me. Anyone who understands hair care, talk to us.
that's right. That's right.
Please.
I know a little bit. Javon is who I always go to when I'm like, what is going on with the hair? But definitely at the end of this video, we'll incorporate a list of different programs and stuff that we've
Yes.
either attended or spoken about. And yeah, I think just start exploring the industry. And we love that social media is giving people the interest to start driving the industry in the right direction,
Yeah,
in my opinion.
absolutely.
So thank you guys so much for coming and joining us today.
welcome.
Mary, thank you for making a product with me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope this was educational and a little entertaining.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Miss Girl.